Welcome to EdSource's latest roundtable. My name is Ann Vasquez, the CEO of EdSource. Last year, more than half of California's high school seniors failed to meet the college prep requirements known as A through G. That means that those students were not eligible for admission at California's public universities. A recent EdSource analysis found that the completion of these courses was lower among Black and Latino students, as well as for those students who came from rural or inland communities. As a parent, I know it can be confusing. Just this month, my eighth grader had to make her first high school class selections, and I sat down with her to explain the difference between the requirements for a high school diploma and the requirements for A through G. Not every child has that benefit. Today, our conversation will explore how schools can help students keep their options open when it comes to college and post-high school plans. Lastly, EdSource would like to thank the College Futures Foundation for making today's roundtable possible. Now for our introductions. First, I would like to welcome to our panel student Delilah Broomer, a student at Los Angeles Pierce College. She also is a member of EdSource's California Student Journalism Corps. Please also welcome Michael McCormick, Superintendent of the Val Verde Unified School District. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Alika Jackson-Jarrell, who serves as the Heritage Site Coordinator at Adelanto High School in the Victor Valley Union High School District. I'd also like to give a special welcome to Dr. Sherry Reed, who is the Executive Director for the California Education Lab in the School of Education at the University of California, Davis. And our moderator today is EdSource reporter Emma Gallegos. Emma, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Anne. Well, so we're just going to jump right in and talk about why A through G requirements are important. So it's pretty obvious if a student wants to be eligible to even apply to a CSU or UC, then they need to stay on track to meet these requirements. But we heard from a lot of readers asking about everyone else. So, what if I'm a student who wants to go to trade school, enter construction, or just attend community college? Should I care about A through G?
Well, heck, I'll jump in there, Emma. Mike McCormick, and good afternoon, everybody. I have twin girls. So as a parent myself, and I appreciated the comments from Anne as having her own student who's an eighth grader. Kids change their mind, and I think that's one of the biggest things. And why not have kids be open to all of the educational aspirations that they might have? The other thing I've noticed is really about opportunity and access. And what I mean by that is there's really talented kids everywhere. And sometimes they might not be even aware of what the possibilities are due to lack of exposure or lack of access for one reason or another. So I really do think it's if we are committed to each student in ensuring that they have the broadest possibility of things that they can do beyond their high school years, why don't we have kind of this A through G mechanism in place where kids and families are really aware. And if they want to take career and technical education classes, there's an opportunity to do what we call double dip, which means not only are the classes meeting the A through G requirements, they're also counting as potentially a completer for a career and technical education pathway.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and we titled this "Keeping Your Options Open," so this is definitely a big part of it. And we also had a commenter who said that A through G might be especially important for those students who do not go on to college because this is their, this might be the last time they have formal education. So I'm also curious if you guys think that there's benefits for those students who just won't go to college for whatever reason. Does A through G help them at all?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the A to G courses will benefit every student, no matter what their plans are. It provides the foundational academic skills and also social skills that are required to be successful at any college or in any job or careers in the military. And so I think they'll benefit everybody.
And Alika, I'd like to address this next question to you. So Alika runs the Heritage Program at Adelanto High School, which is aimed at, well, I'll let you explain what you do, but and so I'd like to ask you, why you think it's important to look at A through G completion rates through an equity lens at the school level.
Well, I'm Alika Jackson, and I run the Heritage Program, which focuses on supporting African American students become A through G ready. We have to look at it through an equity lens because there are so many systemic barriers that keep African American and Latino students from college. We have to hone in on countering some of those barriers, such as the educational barriers, just the lack of information, parents not understanding what A through G even is, or students not understanding what A through G is. So starting there, that's the first piece of this puzzle, is making sure that that information on what it actually is 15 classes that they have to take. If you don't know that part, you can't even access the intricate details that follow.
And Sherry, you've done research on this subject about, some of the inequities in these A through G completion rates. I wonder if you can kind of give us an overview of what you see in the data and what it tells us about California.
Yeah. So about fewer than half of all high school graduates in California from public schools complete the A to G requirements, but those rates vary quite a bit by student subgroup. So if we look at them by racial and ethnic subgroups, we see that 75% of Asian students and about 52% of white students are completing them. And only about 33% of Black and 37% of Latinx students, 36% of Pacific Islanders. So there's really great disparities between racial ethnic subgroups. In addition, English learners, students with disabilities, also low income students also complete the A to G requirements at much lower rates than their non-English learning peers and more affluent students. So there's real equity implications, right, for in looking at this data and real disparities. I think we have a real responsibility for making sure that those rates are more equitable by supporting student success in the courses.
And Delilah, I'd like to turn to you because you attended an LAUSD school where you did not have great access to your to meeting your A through G requirements. So I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about that experience, trying to make sure that you would hit your marks before you graduated.
Yeah, so I was a CTE student and trying to do A through Gs, and I was really stressed about it because at my school it was very difficult to meet all my A through G requirements because a lot of classes conflicted, or we'd have to take classes online because there were very few class options in the schedule. So especially for Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, and for some of our language classes, because we only had Spanish and there were very few times to take it, it was a lot of stressful planning. And since my school only had one counselor for the whole school, it was really hard for me and for other students to know what to do. I mean, I wasn't really told that much about A through Gs, and a lot of us weren't. So we kind of had to take that step on our own. And I feel like that's kind of hard to expect of students, because while some students have the resources and the time to be able to do that, a lot of students in my school were first generation or didn't have the background where they already knew this stuff. So to expect people to go out and figure it out on their own is really difficult, especially because a lot of our students at my school were CTE. I did journalism, and I really didn't want to give up journalism. I would have given up A through G before journalism. So I really had to try to make it work, and it was just very challenging.
Yeah, and you spoke a little bit about awareness, and so I wondered, I'd like to hear just about this idea about the importance of A through G awareness. So some of you guys work at schools where that exists, but I wonder if you can talk generally, maybe if you've worked in schools where it hasn't been a problem or you've tried to build it up, what's the importance of just awareness of how this track works among students, parents, even educators?
So part of addressing systemic barriers is countering educational disparities as far as awareness. Someone asked, I believe, what A through G courses are. there are 15 classes that students between 9th and 12th grade have to complete with a C or higher. So if you are a parent, and I'm a parent of 8, so I've gone through this process many of times. If you are not aware of what A through G is from the start, you don't even know what to ask. So your child could potentially be placed in classes that are not A through G. And then as they go further along in their academic career, they've missed out on the opportunity to take some of those classes. For example, foreign language classes. You need 2 years to be A through G compliant. So if you start taking an A through G course in, say, Spanish in your senior year, you won't make the cutoff. So as a 9th grader, it's pivotal and critical that they be informed, that their parents be informed that this language, even before 9th grade, that students are being taught A through G, the importance of A through G. Why do I need A through G? How many courses do I need to take? What grades do I need to get in those classes so that they count? Once you get through that step, you've countered that educational disparity in that area.
And Mike, I'd like to hear about on the educator side about the importance of this A through G awareness. It's not just parents who struggle with this or students.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I've noticed, and I was a middle school principal and high school principal earlier in my career, but I started off my career in education as an elementary school teacher. So I've kind of had, experiences at all 3 levels. And, a lot of times we rely on counselors, and counselors can be fantastic. And they're really the go-to person on a high school campus that kids are expecting to get the answers from. I know that, we heard from Delilah how that was a challenge in and of itself, one counselor for however many students were at the campus. But I was thinking about this earlier today, like, just by the numbers, there's more elementary schools in the state of California than there are middle schools and certainly high schools. And so oftentimes you have administrators rising up through the ranks to become leaders of unified school districts who haven't really had direct high school experience. So I think that could be a piece of it, is just having people understand that, like, this is a really important aspect of the high school experience and critical to a student who wants to go on to some form of higher education, and particularly for, the UC systems, where many of our students will have guaranteed admissions if they're going to the school within their service area, but not if they don't have their A through G courses in alignment. I put in the chat our Valverde kind of branded, A through G. And to me, it's really about increasing awareness amongst all staff so that they know what's happening. And I think this awareness starts with creating an ecosystem around a college and career culture where you're doing college days, you're doing college signing days, you're talking about A through G requirements down in the elementary school. In my school district, for example, we have AVID K-12. And if folks aren't familiar with AVID, it's advancement via individual determination. There's no first generation designed college going program that has better statistics out there in terms of outcome data. For AVID kids, their high school graduation rate is like 100%. I'm literally not kidding about that. So creating this ecosystem. The other thing I would say, and this is the final thing I'll say in this little section, is for the community that I serve in, we have one of the lowest post-secondary degree attainment rates across the nation. My school district is in the Inland Empire. And so I just want to say, I know local context matters. Like, there might be people on this today where, the college going rates and post-secondary degree attainment rates are much higher in their area. But for us, it really made sense, not only from an aspirational perspective, getting many more of our first generation students into college, but also from an economic perspective. Emma, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah. Well, and I think Alika would have some interesting things to say just about regional context. So, in some areas of the state, far northern California, the Central Valley, and a lot of inland regions, the attainment rates are lower. And so I wondered, Alika, if you could also speak to that in the Victor Valley area.
In our school in particular, our data showed that in 2021, only 6% of our students were A through G ready. 6% of our African American students were A through G ready. I'm sorry. I'm in a classroom. It goes dark sometimes. And then we started an equity program. Our district did something brave. We've had the same data across the district and in multiple districts in our high desert region that showed that there was an extreme disparity amongst our African American students and their A through G acquisition. With that, they decided to do something brave and they started Heritage Program, which is an equity program, and it works toward the culture. Mike mentioned AVID. Across the schools in our area, for some reason, AVID does not attract our African American students. So our district had to go even further and say, well, we need a program that specifically addresses what the data is stating, which is our African American students need additional support in obtaining their A through G courses. So they started Heritage, and the program is similar to AVID, but we hone in on the cultural components of our community. So with that in mind, for example, AVID can take a trip to a college and they go to tour the campus. They see EOP, they see the FAFSA office. We do the same thing, but we make sure that while we're on those campuses, we also visit the Black resource centers, because the first thing that our students notice when they get on that campus is there's no Black people here. And everyone has the inclination of wanting to connect and see people and things that are familiar to them. So I explained to our students that our numbers are low on many campuses because we're not taking our agency courses and we're not going to colleges, but our numbers can rise. We are here. There are communities for you. So having that as part of the equity program, connecting the parents, bringing in the parents. We have quarterly parent meetings where we're informing parents, we're educating parents, we're walking them through the steps of college applications, FAFSA, award letters, housing. Most of our students are first gen students. They haven't a clue about any of these things. And the biggest barrier, I'll keep going back to it, I'm sorry. The biggest barrier from the get-go is lack of information. I think that would curb a lot of what we see. If people have the information, they have access.
Can I jump in here? So I totally agree that awareness and information is really, really important. But I still think that the idea that if we increase awareness and create information still puts the onus on the students, right? To then take that information and do something with it and to make the choice to enroll in A to G courses and to be successful in those. And I think that we also need to acknowledge that the systems we have set up, right, have a lot of responsibility. So it's not just about giving information to students and families so that they can make the choice, but about setting up systems that value the A to G courses, that default enroll students in A to G courses, and make sure that every student has access to the courses and that every student is successful in those courses. So I just want to make sure we're looking at the systems that are serving students too, and not just the individual students themselves.
I want to kind of double click on that too. That's and I'm sure, Alika, you're doing those things. I mean, yes. One of the things that was critical, I think, for us was we really centralized our A through G course approval process. We've got 4 high schools in the district. And what we noticed probably like 10 years ago was each high school was going through its own process of A through G course approval. And in my opinion, there's a way better way to do that. And I think some of these systems around, centralization, and it's not meant to constrain anybody. It's meant to create a system-wide safety net so that all kids are getting access to the same thing. And it doesn't matter which high school they go to. And the other thing I would just want to say is like this idea of a default A through G course taking sequence, I think has a lot of merit. That way when kids are doing their courses and their course selections, they don't have the option to select something that is not going to give them the greatest amount of options when it comes time for whatever they're going to do post-secondary. So I think that's a huge part of creating this systematic safety net that guarantees access for all kids so that, they aren't caught trying to navigate this system. And Delilah, I think, who's with us on this panel represents a great example of this. Here's a really bright kid who, found it very difficult to get the information. So Alika, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yes, I just wanted to say I totally agree with Sherry and what you've said, Mike. Of course, information is just the first tier in this multi-tiered chaotic system that we have. But furthering that, once you start, with the awareness piece, we've discovered through our heritage program so many system changes that needed to be made in order for all of our students, not just the African American students, all of our students to benefit. So one thing in particular we noticed as we were doing transcript analysis and seeing where we were falling short with some of our students, we noticed that math is a gatekeeper for some of the students, science, foreign language. One thing that we noted, our counselors did this process with us too. We noted that counselors were not giving our students foreign language in their early years. They were waiting until 11th grade. Well, why would you do that? If they don't pass it, then they run out of time to complete the A through G. So noticing that, a systemic change happened. Now our students are given foreign language in 9th or 10th grade to start. Same thing with some of the math things that we saw. But not only are we doing the great things with our heritage students. So, for example, we were having college day where I would call students out of class and we would complete their Cal State application or their UC applications. Now, our career advisor is also doing that for students. So a lot of things have changed because of this one equity program. They're mirroring and changing the systems. And also at a district level, they're putting their money where their mouth is. Some of the programs that they've been funding for many, many years don't work, but they continue to fund those programs versus programs that are working and are proving to show great results as far as A through G. They're putting money behind those programs because it's changing how our students succeed in getting to college after high school.
I wanted to jump in with a question from the audience. We're getting a lot of good questions. One of them is about the latest discussion over data science and whether or not that should be allowed as an A through G course. Lots of debate about that. So to the panel, anyone can jump in. Thoughts?
I'll take an early stab at it. I first of all, I'll just say I am not entirely aware of the data science discussion that's happening. I don't know if it's inappropriate to put it in the same category as like statistical analysis. It seems to me, and I did read that that particular question. I was hoping somebody smarter than me might answer it. But I was thinking about this just from a practical perspective. And I think the person put in there, is it going, which would be more valuable for a student to have? I think it was Algebra 2 or data science. And I got to just say, by my way of thinking, data science is going to be the more probably practical / valuable perspectives. As I think about the capabilities that are still very much in their infancy with these generative artificial intelligence and large language models, I would think that they're capable of producing a lot more data points and working with larger and larger data sets, that somebody who has the capability and background in data science, I see that as super valuable. And the other thing I'm a big fan of is why not open up access? Does it have to be, I think for a long time, we've kind of inherited these legacy systems in the state of California and other places where we've got a pretty narrow definition of what student success and student achievement looks like. And so my thinking is, can we expand that to capture the passion of more students and what their interests are? So that's just kind of a general comment. I apologize if I didn't really answer the question specifically to the person who asked.
You did great. Anyone else want to jump in on that? I don't know if we have data science. Okay. Otherwise, I'm interested, you guys have already kind of jumped into it, but I'm interested in talking about some of the solutions. And you've already alluded to some of the systemic changes that can happen at the school and district level, and I'd like to revisit that as well. But there was one question that we got over and over, which is why has California not made A through G the default curriculum to graduate from high school? So there's a pretty big gap. 86% of students graduate from high school, but only 56% graduate with A through G. So I know I've heard the concern that aligning them could mean that we would see a lower graduation rate. But so I'm curious where you guys fall in that debate.
I mean, there are places that have aligned high school graduation and A to G completion. There's, I think more than a dozen unified school districts across the state who have explicitly stated that they've aligned the high school graduation rates and the A to G requirements. And I think there's, many, many more who have kind of defaulted, aligned without maybe making an explicit statement about that, or their high school graduation requirements align. The state sets minimum graduation requirements, and then districts, LEAs are free to set graduation requirements that meet that or go beyond. And so I think it's a local decision, which is probably why the state hasn't taken it on. But I don't know what the State Board of Education is actually considering at the moment or thinking about. To the question about or the concern about raising expectations means that maybe fewer students would graduate from high school. And I'd say we don't have evidence that will actually happen, right? There's some limited research about the when you implement like an exam like the KC or another high school exit exam, that it might decrease graduation rates slightly. But A to G requirements aren't an exam. They're not a high stakes, one kind of shot opportunity. They're a set of courses, right? That with the right supports could really raise, we raise expectations, but we also improve academic skills and cognitive thinking and non-cognitive skills, if you will. And so I think we have a responsibility to raise the expectations and then lean in to making sure that we have the supports in place for students to be successful in those expectations.
I know at our site, one of the wonderful things that came out of starting the Heritage Heritage program was the fact that now all of our students, when they come in as ninth graders, are placed in A through G courses. So they work their way up. And I know that if they are struggling, once they get to maybe 11th grade, they start assessing whether or not they should continue on that pathway to A through G, or if they should take that other track to graduation. But when they enter our school now, they are placed in A through G courses.
Yeah, I love that. And I think just an anecdote too that supports this idea that we should not be fearful that when we increase rigor, that all of a sudden the results go down. We were recognized by the College Board for increasing access to advanced placement classes. And guess what? Our graduation rates went up and everything else went up too, our A through G. And that's what I was talking earlier about. To me, this is kind of like part of a larger ecosystem of creating a culture with high expectations and rigor where, last go around, our African American student group had the highest graduation rate of any student group, period, in the entire school district. I think this most recent set of graduation data, we were at 94% and 59% A through G. And I say that, but here to me is the bigger part of this, because you might think, oh, well, your kids, you have a high socioeconomic population of students that you're serving. Quite the contrary. 85% of our students qualify for the National School Lunch Program. We're 75% Latino, Hispanic, about 13% African American, and a fifth of our students are learning English as a second language. So I say that to say that you may be on this, on this call today, and you may be serving a population of students that's like Valverde's students, lots of first generation scholars. And that's what we want. And so I think that there's really something to be said for creating, again, an ecosystem that has high expectations, rigor, and supports so that students can reach their higher ed aspirations. And also, I just can't say this enough and enough. There are smart kids everywhere. And every one of our kids should have access and opportunity so that they can reach their dreams. And Emma, that's everything I know.
Okay. All right. We'll just leave it there. I'm curious, as you have, especially Alika and Mike, as you've been implementing, some of these new, better practices, I'm curious. I've heard that, sometimes there can be a little pushback for various reasons. And sometimes, people pose the question that, some people might be really into promoting CTE, career technical education. And, is there a conflict between those two? Should we be aligning them? What are some kind of friction points that come when you actually do have the awareness, you're trying to get everyone on board, you're trying to increase those rates? What are some places in the system that kind of make it tricky or you see pushback?
I don't think CTE pathways and A through G pathways should ever be in conflict. Our students who are A through G on the A through G track also take CTE. It's like what Mike said, the more options you have, the better off you are. So we encourage them to take A through G courses. We encourage them to take CTE. Some of the pushback that I got with our equity program was just, why are you focusing on the African American students? And that was an easy answer. The data suggests that. We always want to talk about data, but then when we directly address what the data says, you can't be mad. We want to improve all data points. And with that in mind, once they see that it's working, it's with anything. People are sometimes uncomfortable with change. And when the focus switched to focusing on African American students and even English second language learners, people feel a certain way about it because they have difficulty with change. However, when they see the results and they see that it's supporting the student, if I support a student and make a student better in this program, they're a better student for all of the staff members across the board. So when they realize that, they're okay with it. And we can move forward at a better rate because everybody is on board.
Yeah, I love that, Alika. It's so true. And I think, what's fascinating is like we we're the first school district in the state of California to have FAFSA completion as a graduation requirement. And we got pushback from our local University of California system, saying, leave it to the assorted idiots. I'll never forget this quote. It was, in the comment section of the newspaper, the local newspaper, leave it to the assorted idiots in Val Verde Unified, trying to guarantee that everybody gets access to college, grade F, and it's like, I guess part of me is like, this work takes courage. And I think the courage part comes in where when you start messing around with people's perceived power structures within society and creating access for others to, kind of get that dream of going to college, that does funny things to people. And, I was super grateful to be part of a White House initiative supporting Black Americans. And it's really a credit to what you said, Alika, that when we support our African American students, that's good for everybody. That is good for everybody. Like, hear that. And so anyways, I'll get down off my soapbox. I'm going to say one more thing, as long as I'm, what the heck, go big or go home. If we can, through a policy solution or the stroke of the governor's pen, decide that we need to teach cursive writing, why can we not do some sort of a policy solution for A through G? It seems like a viable path is there.
And Delilah, I also want to hear from you just about, from the student perspective. You were saying that as you were going through and you were on a CTE track, that was really what was motivating you more than A through G. But I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what, when you're a student, what's your mindset? What are you thinking about? How is it trying to juggle that?
Yeah, so at my school, most of the CTE classes counted for A through G, which made it a lot easier. Although a couple of the CTE classes did conflict with time periods of some of the A through G classes, and there was like choices to make. And I'll say, like, I'm a community college student, so technically I didn't really need to do A through G. I didn't know I was going to go to community college, but now that I'm here, I could have not done it, but I'm really glad I did it because, like, I need foreign language, and because I did high level foreign language, and I went through my multiple years of foreign language, I don't have to worry about another requirement in college. I'm still going to take more foreign language, but I don't have to start from scratch. I don't have to start from scratch with math because I went all the way, to higher level math because I did multiple years of it. So it was really stressful and confusing, but I think it was worth it. I just wish it was, for all students, less stressful and less confusing, because it was really beneficial to me just from like a learning standpoint and from a getting ahead standpoint for community college.
Yeah, and you bring up scheduling, and that's something that's come up, master scheduling. So this is not, this is very administrative, but I've heard that it's a very powerful tool for districts that are want to improve their A through G rate. So I wonder, actually, Sherry, would you be able to talk a little bit about some of what PACE has found around master scheduling?
Yeah, sure. So in some of the research done by my colleague Patrick Lee, and then some of the research that we have underway, Justin Liu and I, we've been talking to districts and charter schools with really high rates of A to G completion. And one of the things that we hear repeatedly is that the master schedule matters a lot in order to not set up those conflicts. So in one thing, to the point about CTE, for these districts and schools, it is not a matter of either or, A to G or CTE. It's a matter of yes and, right? So all the CTE courses are A to G approved, or as many as they can possibly fit into the A to G approval. So the CTE courses are A to G approved. And those schools also talk a lot about making sure that their master schedules are set up so that things like sports training or band or these electives that might not be A to G don't conflict with the A-to-G courses that students need in order to meet the requirements. And then, they talk a lot about priority scheduling of students who are have fallen off track to complete A-to-G, that they get scheduled first into the courses that they need in order for them to stay on track. And so I think scheduling, there's a lot of practices around scheduling that can make sure that our systems are set up for student success. Maybe Mike or Alika have more on what's happening at schools. But
yeah, I'd love to hear. I know that both of you work in districts that have done some interesting work around this.
Yeah, I mean, it is about the master schedule. When I was a high school principal, I used to say, like, look, if our priorities aren't reflected in the master schedule, then it's not happening. So there is a skill set, I think, to creating a master schedule and serving the needs of students first. And I say that because sometimes in the creation of master schedules, the needs of the adults can enter that conversation. And so I just leave that there. We have 55 career and technical education pathways in my district, and the overwhelming majority of those career and technical education classes are also A through G approved. So I think that's a big part of it. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the audience because I've been looking in the Q&A section, and there's some wonderful questions in there. So thank you. Keep them coming. I know there's people in there working away. I saw one that I wanted to address directly, and that was around FAFSA completion as a graduation requirement. How does that affect our mixed status families or undocumented families? That's a really great question. For us, we partnered with the grassroots legal organization that really helped us promote that message to our mixed status and undocumented families that, like, this is okay. This is something that you want to do. California legislators have set aside money, not only in FAFSA, but California DREAM Act completion, to ensure that there's money there for students and families who have that aspiration to go to college. And so that has not been an issue for us. And I think you do have to be cautious about mandating things through policy, but I do think that there's kind of this default mechanism of A through G pathways that Dr. Reed talked about a little bit, and I think that's where we're at. It's this idea that this is kind of our default, and that's part of this system that we've created where these are the choices that kids have, and we feel as though we have to advocate for our students when they may not have that voice to do that, so that we're setting them on a path that's going to give them the most options.
And you guys have spoken a lot about the different practices that you've done at a district level. I do wonder, I know it could be tricky, but, what do you think? Do you think the state should be, is there something that you think the state should be doing to promote, to improve A through G completion rates? It sounds like a lot of you like the idea of the default curriculum, but is there anything else that you'd like to see from the state?
I would like to see more funding for education, especially for programs that address the needs of the people in the communities who want what they need, or if they could put more funding into programs that address A through G. I know it's not all about funding, but funding is what keeps these programs afloat. If we lose our funding, we won't have the ability to continue, keeping up with these programs. So that's my answer to that. Funding. Don't quit on programs that are working well in different communities.
Yeah, I think in the 30 seconds or so left, there could be a couple of different paths. I think certainly there's the policy path that's always available, and there's some really smart people that work in that arena. The other thing I would encourage is maybe the State Board of Education to take a look at our college and career indicator and just see if there isn't some fine tuning within that college and career indicator, the CCI, where it brings a little bit more awareness to the A through G.
There's a question from the audience about which is the most common A through G course that's missing for students who graduate? Thoughts?
Yes. So
Go ahead.
at the statewide level, we don't have the data to really see what's the most common course that students are missing in order that they're not A to G complete. But we've done some work with some individual districts, and this won't surprise anybody. It's math and English language arts. That part will surprise people. So I think so that's in terms of students completing or successfully completing the courses, and math, because I think a lot of students struggle. It's a very linear kind of trajectory. And English language arts, because 4 years are required. And if you fall behind in 9th or 10th grade, it really gets hard to make up that course in order to get it A to G complete. But in terms of course offerings, we have been able to look at that at the state level, or I shouldn't say offerings, but the courses that are approved. So not all schools in the state have a full sequence of A to G courses approved. And where we see the lower rates of approved courses is in world languages, science, and visual and performing arts. And likely that is because of availability of teachers in those areas. So that, I guess, was the point I was going to make about state. What could the state do? And I think one of the big things that the state has to pay attention to is investment in teacher education programming, right? And tackling this like kind of teacher shortage crisis that we have, because these A to G courses are just not going to be available to students if we don't have teachers to teach them. Yeah.
Great point, Sherry, because that's what we noticed. We noticed, of course, math and science, but also that foreign language piece that you speak about. We just didn't have enough foreign language teachers. And because of that, that was the reason that they were waiting so long to put students in those foreign language classes, making it to where they had to take the class in 11th grade. So if we hired more teachers or had more funding for teachers and actively went out to promote teacher hiring practices, we would do better as far as filling some of those A through G courses.
I would like to direct this next question to Delilah, but others can jump in as well. But what advice would you give to 9th graders to start thinking about A through G?
For me, I mean, I think that it's really important to just know an idea of what A through G is, even if that means just asking a teacher or a counselor or doing a quick search, because it's good to keep your options open, even if you do want to go to community college, because it's like really helpful to have these requirements done. But at the same time, I don't think it's realistic or necessary for 9th graders to be planning out every class they're taking and every requirement. And I don't think that needs to be done, at least on the side of the student. So I think it's just best to know what you're kind of needing to do. Like for me, I didn't know that in 9th grade, but I did know it in 10th. So I was able to kind of plan things out. If I didn't know things till 12th or 11th grade, I probably would not have been able to complete A through G.
Well, kind of to piggyback off that, if someone's reading this and they want to know whether, their community is doing a good job and they're offering the necessary courses, what advice do you have to parents and concerned community members to how can they check in on their school to make sure they're doing the best they can do around A through G?
Well, I think EdSource is the gold standard. I mean, you guys have some great tools. I'll tell you, seriously, I think EdSource has some great tools. EdTrust West has some great tools that are available that, maybe look at slightly different things, but, there's some great stuff out there on the internet. I also think, I just dropped back in. I think I dropped back in. I don't know that I did or not, but in the chat, I'm a big believer in these one-page like poster type flyer things where, these can be part of newsletters. They can be broadcast on social media. And just that awareness, I think that's the first step. And I loved what Delilah said. You don't need to like tackle all of your A through G requirements necessarily in the first year, but there even are opportunities for students to start on these in the 8th grade. For example, our students get started on their language other than English requirement in the 8th grade. And so I think just kind of that, we always say braiding and branding, braiding and branding. Where are we braiding these initiatives together, and how can we brand them so that we can paint these mental models for people and get this stuff in their brain? And I always think a nice image helps people remember this is important. But I think, EdSource has certainly been a trusted place for people to find resources to help their students.
I agree. EdSource has a great tool. I also think the A-G completion rates are available at the school level and the district level and the county level and subgroup level on CTE's Data Quest. So it's a pretty easy query tool to see what's happening in your local community in terms of completion rates. And then I would just say that, districts and schools have, typically have A-G course approval indicated in their course catalogs. And I think that, if I was, as a parent myself and in the community, asking the questions of school administrations and school counselors about like what systems are in place or how do they, ensure that my student, but other students as well, are enrolled in A-G courses and monitoring their successful completion of that. And all that said, I just envision a world in which parents don't have to be the advocates for them, themselves and students, and that the students like Delilah don't have to go to that we can be certain and sure, assume that the schools are doing everything they can to have students A-G, so it isn't on the onus of the parents and students. My dream world.
And Alika, I definitely want to hear from you because I think you've had some experiences as a parent, in your community as well.
Yes, as a parent, I am always one to let other parents know, this is your school. Go into your schools and talk to the people at your schools. And I know sometimes in the African American community, there's like trust issues with schools. However, we are moving into a space where we need to get over that when we're advocating for our kids. We have to go make those steps, go into the schools, ask these questions. Another system change that we've had here as a result, our students are called into the office 2 to 3 times a year to go over their A through G schedules, to check their grades with them, to call their parents, to make sure that the parents understand. We're sending out emails and phone blasts and parent meetings. We're doing everything we can to attack some of the problems and the disconnects from the parent side to the student side. We have community members coming in, so they're now informed and they know what A through G is. So getting that word out and connecting those dots. But as a parent, it is our duty and our responsibility to ask those questions. And the school is here to support us in that quest.
Let's see. Mike, I'm wondering if you want to leave us with any more words just about what administrators or any educators on here next step they can take to address this.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just going to tell you a quick story. As a parent of twins, I was a high school principal at the time. I was overseeing guidance and counseling, but when it came to my own children, I felt like completely out of sorts, in trying to help guide them in their own college going experience. So this is where it's good to have a network of people that you can reach out to and rely on. And I think in terms of, counselor education and administrator education, it's really about connecting, I think, within those organizations that support counselors and that support administrators and raising awareness. It's interesting. You get out on the national scene a little. I thought everybody knew what AVID was. And it turns out that that's just not the case. And so I think as much as we feel like we're constantly repeating ourselves and beating the drum around A through G and other aspects of, kind of this college going ecosystem that we're trying to create, it's never enough. You've just got to keep doing that. And, I don't know that there's necessarily a need for any more certifications or programs like that to support people. I think the information is out there in terms of the body of research, which continues to grow, that says, hey, this is good for kids. But how do we localize it through those braiding and branding efforts that I was talking about? And certainly today's program, I think, goes a long way in doing that. And I'm so grateful to EdSource for creating a platform for us to kind of raise awareness around this. Clearly, there's a lot of interest, and I think they've answered like 75 questions in the Q&A. So, that's huge. And it tells me that there's a thirst. And the other part of this is, I think, strike while the iron is hot. The iron is clearly hot right now on this topic. So that's where we keep running with it, so that we ensure that our kids get the very best support in just the way they need it to leave them open for the most opportunities possible.
Great. And I will, I'm going to start to wrap up this discussion and throw it back to Anne. I really want to thank everyone who participated today and asked questions. You guys, the questions that attendees sent me, we tried to use them. You did a great job with that, so I really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you to all our panelists and to our student core member, Delilah, for joining us in today's discussion. I would like to mention again that EdSource, and I appreciate all the kind words, Mike, EdSource really does have a lot of information regarding A through G. Our recent work produced by Emma and team includes interactive maps, data, so that you can search what your district A through G completion looks like. There's really just a lot of information that I think can be accessible to all. Thank you to the College Futures Foundation for making today's conversation possible. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week.